Good morning, everybody. We're just letting people in. While we're waiting for others to join us, we have a good group this morning. Take advantage of this moment to go to the chat. Let us know where you are. Let us know your affiliations. Let us know why you're here. Are you a Solo Ager, or do you believe you are? What would you like to learn from today's conversation? And if you would like to connect with some of the people that you see on the screen, share your contact information, your email address, or your LinkedIn profile, however you'd like to connect. We are going to begin in just a second. I'm just letting some other people in, but I want to formally, here we go. Introduce myself. I'm Doug Dixon. I'm secretary and co-founder of the Encore Network, and thrilled to welcome you today to this special conversation on solo aging. As we move through the program, continue to let us know who you are in the chat. That helps us and helps other people know who's in the room and how to reach you if you'd like to be in touch. This is presented by the Encore Network, and the Encore Network, as many of you know, is an organization that champions the civic, social, and economic contributions of people over 50. That's our mission, and within that context, we are very concerned about other factors that can affect people's lives as they grow older. So we are very excited to present today a conversation on solo aging. And to guide us through this conversation, we have gone to the expert, the person who is a national leader in this effort. She's literally written the book on solo aging, called Essential Retirement Planning for Solo Agers. And she'll be talking a little bit more about that in a moment. She also has been the editor of the American Society on Aging's journal a couple of summers or so ago, devoted specifically and entirely to solo aging. So she's very knowledgeable in this field. This is what she does. And we're thrilled to have her with us today. And with that, well, I'm going to say one other thing before I turn it over to Sara. If you have questions, and I know you will, and this is meant to be a conversation, by the way. This isn't somebody talking to us. This is a conversation that we want to have about this topic. So if you have a comment to make from your own experience, if you have a question to ask, just raise your hand. I prefer, makes it a little more orderly if you use the raise hand function, and that way we can recognize you rather than just speaking up. But if you do that, we'll be sure to get to you, and let's give Sara a few minutes. She's got a few slides to share with us to sort of set the stage. But as soon as she has sort of moved into the more conversational part of this, feel free to raise questions or make comments. Raising your hand, and I'll call on you so that we won't have everybody speaking at once. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sara. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Doug. And happy to be here. Thank you all for coming. What Doug didn't say is I used to be quite active in the Encore Network, and I'm still a member. So I was very happy when Doug asked me to do this program. And I'm happy it's a coffee chat because
I am interested to go to Hilton Head and check it out.
Well, somebody is not muted. Please mute yourself if you haven't already. It's just a nice thing to do so that your voice doesn't come through to the rest of us when you have something going on in your space. Okay, so I wanted to set the stage a little bit before I answer questions, and I want this to be mostly a Q&A because I do spend a lot of time just giving kind of one-way presentations. So I'm thrilled that this is going to be mostly you asking questions and me responding to them. But let me set the stage a little bit because I suspect some of you have a few questions about just kind of the parameters that I'm using for solo aging. So I'm going to share my slides, and this is always this always baffles me as to how this really should work. But I am going to share. There we go. And excuse all the mumbo jumbo that's part of the slide. It's just sitting there at the bottom. But essentially, I want to talk today about supporting solo agers because I know that many of you are involved in organizations and agencies that support older adults, and I know for sure that you have a number of solo agers among those constituents in your organization. So first of all, I want to position this as kind of a numbers game and let you know that we're not talking about minuscule numbers here. With the baby boomer generation, there are somewhere around 17, 18% childless, just in that generation alone. That doesn't even account for the people who are solo agers by virtue of other kinds of factors going on in their family. But that many people, many millions of people, we're talking 13, 14 million in this country, do not have children. And these statistics were developed by the US Census Bureau in 2021. So it's a lot. But I also don't want you to think that childless individuals, or sometimes I like to think of it as child-free individuals are the only solo agers. Because now, today's world, we have a lot of different categories of solo agers, which again brings our numbers up to quite a high percentage, somewhere probably in the low 30% of all older adults who can legitimately consider themselves solo agers. Obviously, there are those that have no children. People who live alone often consider themselves solo agers, have no spouse or partner. But there's also this big category of people who do have kids, but their kids move far away. I have a neighbor, in fact, right around the corner from me. She and her husband have one son, and when he was about 30, he had the nerve to fall in love with a Danish woman. And guess where they're raising their kids? Right, Copenhagen. So he and his family are not very available to my neighbors, Judy and John, to help them at all when and if they eventually need it. So, and of course, most of us will need some help at some point. And then, of course, there are people who have families that are dysfunctional in some way. They just can't count on them. And people who are estranged from their adult children. And many that I've talked to have been in that situation for many years. So as you can see, we're climbing the ladder of solo agers being a large percentage of the older adult population quite rapidly with all of these categories. This is the slide that I think is probably the most important one that I ever show people. This is a wheel that I developed mostly out of my own research and observational research and talking to people all over the country about what they depend on their adult children for. These are the categories. These are 7 categories of responsibilities or tasks, areas of involvement that adult children ultimately generally get into with their aging parents. Now, a number of you out there probably did some of this for your own parents. And I know when I give a presentation on solo aging, and I have a group of people in the room that are simply interested in solo aging, and I ask them, how many of you took care of your aging parents? And a huge number of them raise their hand. And I conclude that is because those are the people that really get it. They took care of their parents and they get it, what older adults need as they get into their maybe late 80s, 90s. We have, I think, over 1 million people now in the US that are over 100. So, yes, we all know a few people that are doing really well. They're in their mid to late 90s, and some of them are still driving and they're still living alone. But that is the exception. And I don't think any of us can count on being among those. So we need to make sure that these areas of consideration are going to be managed by someone if and when we cannot. Now, some of this is done through estate planning, and much of it is done casually through, as we've all read in the news, family caregivers are the most prevalent caregivers out there. And they are tasked with doing much of this for their aging parents. But again, those family caregivers are more often than not adult children. So planning for managing these functions in your own life takes some serious thought, some discussions with people in your life, sometimes reaching out to people that you're not related to, sometimes developing relationships with relatives that you haven't been close to in the past, because we all need to have someone that's going to come in and support us if we cannot. I call it a safety net, and I think of adult children as just that, as a safety net. I can't tell you how many times I have had people tell me, I'm here to hear about solo aging because I don't want to be a burden to my children. And I think that is such a worthy approach. People who really want to get these things set up so that they're not a burden to their kids. They're moving into senior living, or co-housing or something where they know they're going to have some other support other than their children. I think that's wonderful. But guess what? If you're a solo ager, you just don't even have that option. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it for now. I have a few other slides, but they're not as important as hearing from your questions. So let me stop the share and turn it back over to Doug for a couple minutes.
Well, let's dig in terms of you've established what a solo ager is and is not. I think even some of us with kids probably think we're not fully dependent on them, or that they may not be fully able to assist. But how does someone get started? What are the first steps that one should be thinking about in terms of preparing to meet these kinds of needs as we grow older?
I think one of the simplest ways to get going is to think of your planning for your later life as a three-legged stool. And so we have financial, we have legal, and then we have social. And honestly, I think the most important leg on that stool is the social, so that we have a community around us. And that can happen in so many different ways. Your community may, in fact, be your extended family. For people that do have kids, and especially for people that have kids that live close to them, that becomes their community. I have a very good friend from back in my school days. I think we've known each other since we were 5 or 6. And she lives maybe 10 miles from me, very, very close. And when my husband and I moved to Santa Rosa, where we're located now, and realized that I was going to live that close to my friend Jody, I thought, oh gosh, I'm going to get to see her so often. We'll go to lunch. We'll have four of us will get together for dinners. We'll just do all kinds of things. Well, no, that didn't happen, because Jody is a great example of a parent who has a huge social network just through her kids. Her two grown kids, now in their early 40s, live close by. They have children of varying ages, and it seems like every weekend there's a ball game, there's a graduation, there's somebody's engagement party, there's birthdays, any kind of holiday, and it takes up a tremendous amount of their social bandwidth. So I do see her, thankfully, but not nearly as often as I would if she were another solo ager. So that's kind of the difference. Those kinds of connections aren't as available to most solo agers. Now, some solo agers who are technically solo agers, maybe for the just for the reason that you don't have kids, you may have a robust extended family network. I know several people who have that, and they're very close to their nieces and nephews, and everybody kind of lives in or near the same geographic area, and that's wonderful. But that whole social network, if you don't have it by virtue of blood, then it's important to establish that through ties with your community, whether those ties are through a book club or a health club membership or anything that you participate in. Maybe you have friends from a workplace, but it's your community. So that's a big leg on that three-legged stool. And then, of course, the legal is, I think everybody needs to do some what's known as estate planning, big fancy term, but the basics of it are you need to have an advance directive for health care, meaning you need to name a proxy, someone who will step in and make health care decisions for you if you cannot, and someone who will take over managing your finances if you cannot. So those are the two biggies, and I find that those are the two questions that when you're creating an estate plan, usually through an attorney or legal aid or something, that some assistance that's out there in the legal arena, I find that those are the two questions that get solo agers kind of running the other way. They just don't know who to put down on those lines. You know, who do you want the hospital to call in the case of an emergency? Who do you want to step in? And many solo agers just have no answer for that. And so they give up trying. And that leaves yourself very vulnerable. That leaves solo agers very vulnerable if you do that. So those are the three areas that I think are the most important and the place to start.
Beth is asking, what if you don't know someone who can step in and provide those kinds of supports? Do you have tips or suggestions about how people search out and connect to resources that can be helpful?
Yes, that question is a challenge because it differs in every area of the country. I'm in California, and here in California, we have what I consider a wonderful resource called a professional licensed fiduciary. And many solo agers use a licensed professional fiduciary to fill in for the adult kids that they don't have. Fiduciaries are always their primary role they see is to fill in with being a financial safety net. But many fiduciaries today are willing to take on the responsibility of health decisions as well. Now, most of you are not from California. So what do? Try first to try your local area agency on aging and see what resources they have for patient advocates is another role that can play, is another person that can play a big role in your life. And professional guardians. Again, the professionals will differ from one area of the country to another. There are professional advocates that are more than just medical advocates, but I think we all need a medical advocate as well. And by the way, you can have multiple people. If you have a relative that maybe lives far away and you're discounting them because they don't live close enough, that person can be supplemented by a professional that you would pay essentially out of your estate. And that's also a sticking point for a lot of people. If you do involve a professional, they will, of course, need to be paid either upfront by you or through your estate after you pass on. So again, your area agencies on aging, your councils on aging are a good place to go first as a resource. Attorneys themselves often have I still refer to it as a Rolodex of people that they might suggest to you that could take over as a professional that could take over some of those functions. Attorneys can do it too, but they're very expensive. Financial advisors cannot. They're in a position where that's a conflict of interest for them. However, they may know of people that they have worked with, or they have other clients who are working with them. So it's a challenging question, and I'm watching things evolve every year. More and more states are looking at licensing professional fiduciaries just for this reason. Arizona has done it, but so far, those are the only two states I know: California and Arizona.
And Elva, I'm going to ask you to wait just for a second, but you can unmute yourself. But I want to call out what Carolyn said in the chat, which is that fiduciary is a key word because these are people who are ethically bound, serve a code, and you are certainly safer with them in terms of managing your money and some other factors than you would be relying solely on a friend who may or may not, or someone who is unlicensed who may or may not be highly honest. So, Elva, your turn, your question.
Okay, I'm one of the fortunate ones, I guess. I do live alone in a small house here in Arlington, Texas. But after I retired, that was 13 years ago, I began a group called Ambassadors for Aging Well. And we were the energy behind getting a new world-class senior activities center opening. The grand opening is tomorrow. And that's going to be a great place for us to gather and meet each other and spend time. I am on a bunch of Facebook groups with older women, and I'm horrified by how many of them are being evicted. I mean, affordable housing is a huge problem for elders, and a lot of women are having to live in their car. A lot of them are seeking co-housing opportunities and things like that. It's really shocking that they would be in such a situation, but it is happening. I'm going to be 80 in July. I do have a son who lives about 50 miles away, so he's there for emergencies. I had cataract surgery this month, and he was able to drive me because, after you have anesthesia, the doctor won't let you drive yourself home. So I'm fortunate in that regard, but I wanted to also point out the role that pets can play for older people and the companionship that a dog or a cat, can mean to an older person.
No, thank you for that. I congratulate you on getting that senior center open. That's a wonderful resource, and I should have mentioned that right along with area agencies on aging, because they often have resources as well for your area of the country.
Yeah, I was chair of the AAA here in Fort Worth for Tarrant County. I chaired that AAA group and approved the budget and all the things that go along with being chair. But
Thank you, Elva.
yep.
If other people have comments or questions, raise your hand and let us know, and we'll get to you. Meanwhile, there have been several people in the chat, including Ajua, who has talked about a group that she is linked with that she finds very helpful. Jackie has asked the question or made the point about losing friends and family to death over time. So you may not start out as what you would classify as a solo ager, but you may feel more and more alone as you grow older because of the changes that happen.
Yeah,
Do you have a thought about that, Sarah?
well, yes, I mean, as we all get older, we begin to lose people from our lives for various reasons. One of the interesting things for solo agers is that they often have a number of friends, some of whom do have kids. And after 30, 40 years of stability, all of a sudden, some of those friends pick up and move across the country to be where? Near their kids. So we lose people for all kinds of reasons, and certainly death is one of them. It's just one more reason to begin planning and to plan as well as you can for your later life. You know, I can't help but sometimes feel a need to say to those of you who may feel like you just have no avenue for doing this, get together with a bunch of people and talk about options. Sometimes there are options that you're not thinking about that somebody else might come up with. And the friends are often our greatest resource. Although I always encourage people to cultivate younger friends so that those younger friends can kind of pay it forward. Because eventually, if they're solo agers, they will need some younger friends. But right now, you need younger friends who can step in for you when you need someone to pick up medication or help you after a surgery or walk your dog when you're under the weather. We all need friends to do that. So cultivating friends is a big, big part of this. You remember I said of that three-legged stool, I think social is probably the most important.
So, Sarah, someone has asked how to raise hand. And it's kind of, it's interesting because Zoom keeps hiding this in different places. But if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see something that says react. And my screen, it has kind of a heart around it. And click on that and you'll see raise hand. And Miriam, we're going to get to you in just a second. But I also want, someone has mentioned the villages. And then there was a question about what villages are. Sarah, do you want to say a couple of words about the village movement?
Yeah, it's so hard to sum up what a village is very succinctly. Villages really are we're talking about here are better known as virtual villages, although they are linked to a particular geographic area. They're not the kind of village of old that we think of. The village movement started about 30-something years ago now in the Boston area, where a group of people decided that they needed each other to rely on and to grow old with one another so that they would have each other as resources, just like we're talking about now. So they formed what they called a village. And that really took off, and a number of other areas of the country started doing it, creating these quote unquote villages. There's now a whole network of villages, hundreds of them all over the country. Now, what do they do for you? When you join a village, you get the resource of being able to tap into the village for volunteers, which is what most villages are run on, the energy of volunteers. Volunteers to do some of these things that we've been talking about, like walking your dog if you cannot, taking you to an appointment, picking up a medication. There are a number of things that from time to time we just can't do for ourselves. And when we live alone, that's a challenge. So villages pick up some of that slack. It varies all over the map in terms of how much it costs to belong to a village. You may or may not live in an area where there is a village. And again, you do have to be geographically located in a particular area to be part of a village. Um, uh, some of you who do participate in a village may want to say a few more things about what it's done for you, what it's meant for you, because it's a pretty important element of our ability to age well. And I'm always applauding when people tell me that they are part of a village or they're developing a village. It's a grassroots effort. People have to do it themselves, and then they can join the village to village network by meeting certain parameters. Anyway, that's a real quick and dirty about villages.
Thank you. And if you want to find out if there's a village in your area, you can Google Village to Village Network, and there's a whole list, so you can find out. Miriam, you've been very patient, and you're on mute.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to ask a question, and greetings from the UK. I'm in
Welcome.
Bristol in the West Country, and I've been coming to these webinars for a while. So Sarah, I'm just so aware of the importance of the social dimension. You know, the number one source of well-being is our social connections. And it is challenging as a solo ager. I'm finding it at the moment because my work is drying up. So I'm moving from working, and sort of much of my connection has come through that towards not working. I heard you mention book clubs and other clubs, because it is such an important aspect of solo aging, the social dimension. And there are things that work against it. I wonder what else you could say to enhancing that social connection.
Yes, I so agree with you. We're definitely in sync about that social connection being important. And we read more and more today about the dangers of loneliness and isolation, and that is truly the enemy. Isolation leads to loneliness, and loneliness, as we've now seen from some of the studies that have been done, leads to an early death and dis-ease. So finding a new social network after we kind of remove ourselves from the social network we had when we were working often takes some effort. And I can't tell you how many times I have been told by people that they're struggling with that. And they ask me, how do I make friends? I just don't know how to make friends at this age. And sometimes that's followed by the statement, I'm not a joiner. Well, those two things are diametrically opposed. You have to be a joiner in order to really find some friendships. You have to join something. Join something you're interested in, whether it's a hiking club, a quilting club, a book club, it doesn't matter. They're all sources of friendship, potential friendship. Are you going to love everybody immediately when you join? No. But over a course of months and years, you will learn about each other. You'll form bonds that you didn't think possible. I'm personally am in 2 book clubs. It's outrageous. I have no time for that, but I'm committed to it. And I do somehow get the books read. Sometimes my reading of the book involves listening to the Audible as I get my daily walk. But I participate. And I didn't like all the women in those book clubs when I first joined them. But over time, I have learned to appreciate things about them that I didn't care for in the past. I've learned to see them in more dimensions than just the surface dimension that I first saw. And that's how friendships develop. You're kind of forced to do that at work because you got to work with these people. It's your job. And eventually ties grow. But you can do that yourself by putting yourself in a situation where it will happen. So that's really, there are no quick fixes to finding friendships. You really have to jump in and make it happen for yourself. I hope that didn't sound too preachy.
Oh no, that sounded great. And thank you for acknowledging that it is a struggle. I've been trying this since moving to a new village 2.5 years ago, and I am developing networks. And also, you're right, it takes time to go beneath the surface. But yeah, become a joiner. I think you're absolutely right. And I'm also someone who hasn't been a joiner. So you just got to do it and put the effort in. Thank you.
Good. Ajua, good to see you.
Yes, Doug, good to see you. Well, I am enjoying this. And at the same time, I'm thinking, why the social part is always what gets me, because I like being social until I am in an environment and everyone is relying on me to bring the fun or the idea of what to do and so on. I like when I meet with friends, not just for it to be, let's have coffee, let's have lunch. But sometimes let's just go to the arboretum and walk and just maybe sit on a rock in the woods and catch up with each other. I bring all kinds of ideas to the table, and the people that come with me, or I ask if they would be interested, they usually are, but they don't return the favor. It's almost as if there is no creativity on their side or something. I don't know. So they sort of go back to their routines, perhaps because they have grandchildren of their own and other things that keeps them going, until I show up again. I say, how about this? And oh yes, they like to do that. So we go again. And it hurts. It really hurts. It feels almost like, geez. So if I didn't show up again, would you even remember me? Would you, let's form a way of connecting, even by phone once in a while. Let's agree on some way that we keep going. And so when I bring even those ideas up and nothing happens, or that I'm the one who keeps it going, it feels laborious.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I recommend book clubs, organizations or clubs that have a purpose to them. Because let's just take a book club as an example. The reason people get together is because it's an established routine. You're not expected to be the leader unless it's your book and you're supposed to lead the discussion, and that usually rotates around the group. But you don't have to be responsible for it. It's a system that works on its own, so you don't have to keep the ball in the air all by yourself. It's also difficult to move into a new area later in life. I did that 10 years ago. I moved to a new area of California, and I needed to make all new friends. I kept some of the old friends, of course, but I needed friends that were local. And so I got out there and again joined things, joined a health club, joined the book clubs, joined a women's group. That's the only way I know of to make friends, is to do that. And then through those relationships, individual friendships can grow. So I don't have any words of miracle words for you in terms of the friendships, but I do encourage you, Adjoa, to keep going on it and maybe find some more, how to say this, more structured groups to join.
I'm currently in 2 book clubs.
Good.
And that hasn't solved my problem either. So I think this is where, no matter how many different ways people bring ideas together, I get puzzled by how they don't answer, they don't give me a chance to check the social box the way I'd like to.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, and just one quick observation, and that is, there are casual friends and then there are more intimate friends. And the intimate friends are the ones who ask about you. You're not always just asking about them, right? So there's that kind of reciprocity, and it's hard. It really is to spend enough time with someone to feel comfortable or to find someone with whom you feel that connection. But I think it's a little bit like dating, isn't it? It's it just takes time and maybe a dose of luck. Are there other questions or comments? While you're thinking of it and raising your hand or entering them in the chat, I have a question for you, Sara. What's your take on all of this age tech that we keep reading about? All these things that are being developed to assist older adults with things like, remembering to do this or that, or providing services in other ways through the use of technology as opposed to individual interaction.
Well, Doug, I'm going to answer that in a way that you probably didn't expect. But where technology comes into all that we have been talking about is, how do you meet with people? And I have to say, I'm not anti-technology. I use a lot of it myself. I think meeting on Zoom, the way we are right now, is a wonderful technology that has been developed for us. This is wonderful today because you are all from all corners of the country, and you can jump on at a reasonable time. But I don't do a lot of this. I don't do a lot of it because I don't do any of it locally since COVID. Now, when COVID happened, yes, I met with all my friends, my book clubs, my women's organizations. We all met on Zoom. It was wonderful to have it. But once that emergency subsided, once the need to stay away from other human beings subsided, I got rid of most of it in my life because I want people in the flesh and blood near me. I want to be able to touch them. I want to be able to see their expressions in 3 dimensions, not just 2. So I just offer that up as another issue that I think older adults face. The over-reliance on this kind of technology to meet with people, I think, is a disservice to ourselves. I understand that when you cannot get out, it beats the hell out of nothing. But if you can get out, if you can get together with people, do things physically together, indoors, outdoors, it doesn't matter. The connections I think, are so much more powerful. So my bias, and I'm going to hang on to it. Other tech, I don't know. I watch it. I don't have a lot of time to keep up with the kind of tech that's being developed out there. But if it looks appealing to me, I'm all for it.
Well, there are also technologies and solutions that use technology as a basis for, we think about the obvious things like pill minders and that kind of thing, but there really is an increasing number of opportunities and options. And I'm not ready to declare those a substitute for the kind of human interaction that you're talking about, but they may be adjuncts, and I think it's worth paying attention for that. Paul is asking a very interesting question, which is, how do you see the connection process in particular, but other aspects of aging that might be different for men than women?
That's a great question. Thank you, Paul, for asking that. There's no doubt, in my perspective from doing this for 10 or 12 years now, women are definitely more drawn to talking about this, to solving this, to trying to figure out ways to stay connected to people. I get 10 to 1 women at my talks. I'm always thrilled when men do show up because in my observation, that's all I have, they tend to be less interested. On the other hand, I think from what the men that I have talked to tell me, they are much more challenged in many ways to building and maintaining friendships than women are. The friendships that developed at work likely are gone. It's just true for women too. But again, it's the same solution, and that's being more of a joiner. I am absolutely thrilled to death that I am going to get to go down to an area that's a couple hours from where I live and talk to a group of men. There is a national organization of men called SIRS, Sons in Retirement. And I don't know where it started. I don't know whether it's initially connected to some religious organization. I have no idea, but I've heard about it several times and I was asked to speak to them. And I'm so excited about it because I'm going to learn so much. I'm going to ask a lot of questions and find out more from actual groups of men who have at least made the effort to join this particular organization. So in my mind, they're a way step ahead from most of the men that I run into, including my own husband, who finally joined a men's lunch group that meets most Fridays. But he can find a million reasons to not go. And he doesn't have the same kind of commitment that I do to my groups. So it's a puzzle to me too, Paul, but I hope to learn more about it, to what's happening with men. There is one man that is, and I'm not going to come up with his name. I was on a panel with him at American Society on Aging, who is talking about solo aging. He's the only man that I know that is out there specifically talking about solo aging from a social point of view. There are a couple men who are talking about it from a financial point of view. One who has just written a book. I'm going to turn around for a minute and grab it. This is the book, Childless Guide to Life and Money. And the author's name is Jay Zygmunt. I will put it in the chat.
And while you're doing that, Ingun Boll who leads the Wise Move Society, for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's worth a look, says that this is her experience as well. Many more women join her groups than men. And Terry says there's a group in the village that she's a part of called Village Gentlemen. So they've created a special focus for men. So that may be something, if you're a gentleman, you may want to look out for initiatives like that.
Yeah.
Other
Thanks
questions
for asking that question.
yeah. Other questions? This is we're getting to the end, so this may be one or two chances left to make a comment or ask a question. What's been your experience? In particular, if you have found a way to make connections or to find services, access to services that have been helpful.
If I could jump in real quick.
Yes.
It's for me, listening to this conversation, I really enjoy it. I listened to several conversations. When I realized at 40, you meet this gap connected with the world. And then at 50, there's even a bigger gap where you don't connect with the world. And I can only imagine what it's going to be like at 60. But what I would say to everyone in the group is, I'm seeing more people connecting than I've ever seen before. And I mean in person. I see groups of people just hanging out at parks, putting out posts on, I forget the name of the app. It's a neighborhood app. So I see, yeah, Nextdoor. And I see people getting involved, which inspires me. they're getting involved in conversations that connect us as humans. I see more people smiling and laughing. I go to the Denver Art Museum here locally next to me, and I'm seeing more people up in age there enjoying themselves. And I'm learning that you have to use technology in certain places, but it's the courage to communicate with people. And I think that's that we need more than anything. We need more people just saying, "Hey, hi, how are you? How are you doing?" And not just book clubs, but just conversations. And I think listening to this, I'm desperately in need of community, and I've just started getting better with the TBI and the career job and solopreneur, you name it. And it's encouraging to see this group or be in the room, but I would love to see opportunities to sit with someone, more often to sit with people than not. And I think that's where we need to figure out, and I don't know who's gonna or who has a better way of doing it, but ways for us to connect with each other and just have conversations, not just about work, life, or business, just being humans. We've lost that skill set.
Well, and I also think that, and Melinda has made this point, volunteering, getting connected through work, those are not necessarily social by design, but they many times have social components, and you meet people whom you have a common interest with, and who might be a good friend as well. So those are other avenues that we didn't talk about earlier. Jackie, you're on, and you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I'm 2 weeks of laryngitis. I apologize. So I may have to just be quiet, but nice to see some men on the call. And thank you, Doug and Sarah. I've met you both. And I was just going to say that I think that I'm very involved in my faith community, which has, for example, something called Village Table, which is non-denominational, which is seated and takes place in the basement of my church, and we make meals that get delivered to places like community fridges and other, about 600 meals a month, and it's very intergenerational, which I think is extremely important and fun. And so I think opportunities, it's great to find opportunities like that. Sorry, I think I better be quiet because my voice is still just too bad. Thank you.
Jackie, thank you for bringing up the faith community. I was remiss in not giving that as another example of how people can begin to connect with new people, whether you've been part of your faith community in the past or want to join one for the first time, or maybe rejoin the faith community of your youth. It all counts, and that's a wonderful way to find groups of mutual interests. Gosh, most faith communities have all kinds of interest groups, including groups of older adults, and someone also mentioned, Melinda mentioned volunteering. Another great way to meet people, get involved with people, find a cause you believe in, and just go volunteer. Gosh, this country needs volunteers more today than I think ever in the past. And it's a great way to connect with people and feel good about giving back in a way too.
And volunteering is also a way to make intergenerational connections. And we haven't said that out loud so far, but I think that's so important. When we have only friends our own age, there's a missing dimension, I think, and particularly those who are child-free, to use that term. That opportunity to connect with younger people, I think, can be very energizing. Who has the last word today? Or question? Let's see. What do we have here in the chat? the chat has been very busy, and I just want to say that we've been recording this conversation today, and we will send a copy of the recording to everybody who registered. So you can look for that in the next 2 or 3 days. And I'll include a copy of the chat as well, so that you have all of the information that's contained there. Sarah, one question that came in is how can people reach you? So you may want to put your contact information in the chat, and I'll include that in the email that we send out and follow up to.
I think maybe the
Sarah.
best way is for me to put my slide set up again and jump to the
Go ahead.
yeah, jump to the last one. There.
And
That's fine.
can we also include the slides? Because there are a lot more
Yes,
slides we showed today and lots of good information.
Yeah, I'm happy to share the slides, no problem.
Okay, here's the book, right? You want to see
There's the book that started it all.
how did you get started in this? What was the trigger?
Well, as I've mentioned a couple times, I don't have children myself, and I was, I don't know, about 15 years ago, I started seeing a lot of my contemporaries spending a tremendous amount of time taking care of their aging parents. And at one point, I was sitting and having a glass of wine with a good friend of mine who also doesn't have kids, and she was talking about taking care of her mom. And I said, Sandy, who's going to do that for us? And that was kind of that was the epiphany and the question that launched all of this. And I started researching what people were saying, and nobody was doing anything. The only expression out there, the only term that was being used, and it was being used by the medical community, was elder orphan. And a woman who's become a friend of mine, and also working in this space, started the Elder Orphan Facebook group, which within a couple weeks' time blew up to thousands of people. And she still manages that. It's kind of like having a tiger by the tail. I joined for a while, but they kicked me off because I'm married. So in their estimation, elder orphans are not married. Anyway, I decided there had to be another term for it. So I coined the term Solo Agers, and it seems to have stuck because a lot of people in the field of aging and senior living are using it now. So I'm happy about that. I think it's a good neutral term, not negative, not just neutral, just kind of says it like it is.
Well, this is how you can reach Sarah. This is the book that she wrote. I highly recommend it. I have a copy myself. I've recommended it to many, many people over the years. And I remember the conversation that we had, Sarah, as you were thinking about writing this book. So
Yeah.
congratulations on getting it done. And for those of you who are part of communities or programs, I think somebody asked about how to connect with you because they want to invite you to be a part of a program. By all means, this is what Sarah does. She's good at it. So take advantage of the opportunity to bring her to your group. So if you want to take the slides down, I have just another couple of things to say before we close. I
Yep.
mentioned that I'll be sending out some information shortly so that you have this as sort of a record of our conversation today. Thank you all for attending, and thanks to Sarah for being a part of our program today. We have a couple of things coming up that I'll just mention briefly. On April 8th, we'll be talking to some people about intergenerational, sort of an extension of our conversation today, intergenerational connection, in particular around building alliances to end ageism. Ageism isn't something that happens just to older people. It actually happens to younger people and people of other ages as well. And there's an opportunity for us to build connections and build a movement that's broader than just older people complaining about, not just complaining, but being affected by ageism. So that's coming up on April 8th. On April 10th, we have a member exchange plan. This is an opportunity for us to build connections that are not necessarily impeded by a conversation or a topic. You often wonder what's behind the person on the screen, right? And is that somebody that I can build a relationship with? So there you go. Here's an opportunity to build a connection to people who are like-minded. And then later in the month, we'll be doing a workshop on AI. For those of you, and I know Elva mentioned all of the tools that she's using that have been very helpful to her, including in if you read the notes, in her decision about which referenda to support and which not to. Learn more about AI tools, particularly those that are relevant to the job search. So much more, affinity groups, other things going on. Look at the website and check the event calendar to get all of the details and to register. So with that, thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks again to Sara, and we look forward to seeing you at one of our future events. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.